What's going on, everybody? Welcome into the Friday edition of the Daily Dime. Didn't get the big wins we wanted in NFL last night. We've talked about it all week, Zach. It feels like we are on the brink of a big night, and I know we have a lot of plays that we like tonight. So hopefully this is the one.
Yeah, I'm excited to get into it. Obviously, it was a kind of a unique slate schedule-wise last night with just the 3 games, all of them starting late, but at the same time at 8 p.m. From the prop side, right? Like you kind of talked about there, like it feels like we've been dancing around that giant night on the prop side of things, but the DFS success continued last night. Shout out to Rat Pack, big win, taking down a GPP over on DraftKings. So I mentioned yesterday we've had a little bit more success on FanDuel so far this season. Boom, DraftKings takedown there for Rat Pack. So congrats to him. Shouted out the GPP scores and the Daily Dime, which is of course what we look at here on the Dime. So we'll talk the DFS slate later. Big slate on both sites. DraftKings only cut off the last 2 games, so plenty to talk about there. But I know we've got some props that you and I are pretty high on here this morning.
Yeah, we do. I don't know if you noticed in his lineup, but he just stacked all of those Timberwolves that we talked about with great GPP scores. We talked about how too, there wasn't even that much inverse correlation because it was just a good game environment. We were seeing concentrated enough production amongst those guys, and they went out and delivered all the way through for him. So that was very cool to see on that 3-gamer. But you're right. Let's jump into today's picks. And why don't you start us off with your favorite as I bring up underdog here?
Yeah, so my favorite here, and you can get this pretty much anywhere from what I've seen this morning, is Jaren Jackson Jr. more than 23.5 points. Now, that line is up there, right, for a guy like Jaren Jackson, but for good reason. There's no Desmond Bane, no Marcus Smart still for this team. Of course, guys, more ancillary pieces like G.G. Jackson, still out with the broken foot. Ja Morant also out here tonight. So if you go back to the beginning of last season, right, we've had plenty of time with Jaren Jackson on the floor with various combinations of those other high usage options off. So it's over 1,000-minute sample with no Smart, no Bane, no Morant. Jaren Jackson Jr., 35% usage rate here. So you look through his game logs so far this season, he's already had some big scoring games of late. And again, the Grizzlies have been ramping their minutes up slowly here as well. I also like the matchup here against Washington. So this is one I'm just leaning into the large sample we have with those guys off and Jaren Jackson kind of being the alpha offensively on this team. So there's some other guys from Memphis that we can talk about from a DFS perspective. But in terms of our prop picks here this morning, I love the Triple J over on his points.
Yeah, I mean, Washington's given up over 123 points per game, second most in the league. So when you have a high usage guy like Jaren Jackson in this kind of matchup, it's just the perfect situation, especially when someone like Ja Morant is out. So very much on board with this. I'm going to take us to another points pick. I'm going Donovan Mitchell over 24.5. Our tool loves this one. We haven't projected close to 29 points. And I always look when we have such an outlier points projection, the first thing I ask is, okay, is this guy in a new situation where maybe we just don't have enough data yet this season? Nope. Same situation for Donovan Mitchell. All right. Is there somebody out that maybe we are giving him too much credit instead of dishing out that extra usage to somebody else? Nope. So when those two things are not true and we have that outlier points projection, I'm that much more inclined to believe it. If you look at our betting tool, which is incredibly strong from a team level perspective, we have a slight edge to Cleveland and a slight edge to the over. So I think this just makes a whole lot of sense, especially given how much he's been playing this season. So Donovan Mitchell over 24.5 points is going to be my favorite.
Yeah, I really like that one. And I think this is a guy who, again, hasn't had the best start to the season in terms of the high bar that we have for a guy like Spida, right? But now that line is down, the good matchup here, again, a good matchup in the sense that I think this one is going to be extremely competitive, right? We've seen how good Golden State has been, at least relative to preseason expectation, and a lot of that comes down to their defense, but I still think Donovan Mitchell is a guy that can push through that, right? And the fact that what you brought up off the top, right? The tool loves this today. And when the tool agrees with kind of, right, we joke about it, but the noggin model, just looking at some of these lines, looking at the matchups, the no ball side of things, right? When those two things align, that's when we really feel strong about some of these picks.
Yeah, I think it's worth remembering, this guy averaged over 28 2 years ago, over 26 last year. And we saw him average close to 36 minutes last year. The first 5 games of the season, he had 1 game over 30 minutes, but now he's at 3 straight, 35, 31, 34. So getting back to his usual minutes load. And the line basically suggests that he's going to be playing that 30-minute max that he's averaging so far this season. So I just think this is at least a couple points too low for Donovan.
Yeah, I like it. The next pick that I'm going to, another Eastern Conference team here, opposite end of the standings right now. I want to look at Giannis, second end of a back-to-back here. For a number of teams, the Bucks are one of them, and going to the Garden tonight to take on the Knicks. So unsurprisingly, right, you see the Bucks here as 7-point road dogs, and just a 223 implied total here. So not too ugly, definitely not the lowest on the slate. But I want to zero in on that rebounds line because this is another pick that lines up with what I'm eyeballing here this morning. You go check the tool. The tool loves this pick as well. Higher than 11.5 rebounds for Giannis Antetokounmpo here this morning. He's having to do literally everything, right? That hasn't changed much over the last few years, but it's more of a desperate, I have to do everything now rather than this is just us running through the regular season slate. And if I'm going to attack this Knicks team, they've been a little bit lackluster in terms of the defensive side of the ball. Again, relative to preseason expectation, we're starting to, like you talked about with maybe looking at guys who are in new situations, like just looking at the teams as a whole, not necessarily the individuals, maybe some of the moves in the offseason, specifically in the front court, not just the trade to bring in Karl-Anthony Towns and ship out Julius Randle, but the absence of Mitchell Robinson and the reluctance of Tom Thibodeau to play a guy like Jericho Sims, who's a little bit more solid down there defensively. Those guys aren't getting big minutes. Mitch Robinson obviously not playing at all. So Giannis, the one thing we know he's going to do when he goes out there, he's going to hit the glass. He's right around, I think, 13 rebounds per game so far this season. And if you throw Giannis and Cat down there in the paint, I'm going to take Giannis, probably 9 times out of 10 to go get a contested rebound. So, right, the Knicks are a pretty darn good rebounding team in terms of how much they crash the glass on both ends of the floor. Not super worried about getting out and running the break. But I still think Giannis has a clear advantage here physically. And again, this is a guy who averages well over 11.5 rebounds per game. So my only worry here is potential blowout with how bad Milwaukee's been and on the second half of a back-to-back. But as long as this one stays competitive and you get full minutes out of Giannis, I love this one.
Yeah, I liked what you said to me. It was just one line. It was just, who's going to keep him off the glass? Cat?
Yeah.
No. So that was all that you needed to convince me on this one. All right, let's see. Where am I going next? I'm going Jimmy Butler, over 4.5 assists. And he's averaging above this, but big thing is, a year ago, averaged close to 5.5 assists on 10.1 potential assists. This year, he's up to 10.7 potential assists, and Denver's dead last in the NBA in terms of opponent assists allowed. They're allowing the most assists per game. So I think this is just a really strong one for Jimmy. And I always kind of think like when we have attacked assists in this kind of range, we have had a ton of success. It's just, I think, a little bit harder for books to price these like peripheral assist guys perfectly well. And we know that Jimmy's going to be attacking. And we know that Denver has allowed a lot of that type of penetration and, of course, those assists with it so far this season. So just going to continue to attack them here with a superstar like Jimmy.
Yeah, and I don't think his job gets tougher with no Aaron Gordon present on the other side, right? And you look at this game in terms of the spread, just a 3-point spread in favor of the Nuggets here at home. And again, 221.5 implied total, not popping off the page, but not sending you running away either, thinking that this game is just going to grind to a halt. I like what you brought up there about the potential assists and those slightly increasing this season. And I think that lines up with what we should be seeing or what we thought we were going to see out of Jimmy and taking this regular season this year a little bit more serious than the last few. So I like this one as well. So if I'm looking right, we're trying to get up now that we're well past our 3 pick, right? And you can cycle through these, of course, especially on underdog, but to get up to a 6 pick, right? I'll throw in a 5th here. Let's go to Jaden Ivy, Detroit taking on Atlanta. So another team that we're going to talk about from a little bit of a different perspective in the DFS portion in a few minutes, but Jaden Ivy more or higher than, right? 1.5 threes made here on Underdog. The Tool loves this, has him over 2 made threes. I think it's actually closer to 2.5 made threes in the model tonight. So like, even if we don't think we need to be that hot with the projection, Jaden Ivy is a guy who's benefiting from the coaching change, right? The days of Monty Williams closing games last season with Killian freaking Hayes are long gone, right? We're getting more full minutes. He's at a career high 32.3 minutes per game, career high 15.1 shot attempts per game, career high 5.1 3-point attempts, career 41.3% from beyond the arc. So as a guy who shot below 35% through his young career, I don't think that the 40+% is going to stick around. I think that might be a little bit of a mirage, but I am encouraged by the minutes increase, the volume increase there for Jaden Ivy. It's translating to his average points, right? 19.8 per game. This is a guy who didn't average more than 16.5 in either of his first 2 seasons, and fantastic matchup against the Hawks. The Hawks, a team allowing the most threes to opponents so far. So I'm in lockstep. Like, when we have these big slates, it's a lot easier to find these props that you like on the surface, and then you go to what the model says. And sometimes the model's even stronger in your favor. So I'm a big fan of this Ivy pick as well.
Yeah, he's gone over this number in 6 of 9, and now he gets a matchup where the Atlanta Hawks have allowed the most points per game and the most threes per game. So we got the most assists per game in that Denver matchup with Jimmy Butler, and then going right to the Jaden Ivy matchup against the team allowing the most threes per game. So love that one as well. 6th one, we want to maybe put our heads together here and find that 6th one, because we have a couple leans, right? We're leaning over on the Zubac's rebounds. The Tool really likes that one as well. We have Zubac's projected at 12.7, and his line is only 10.5. Problem is, the Clippers the Kings allow the 5th fewest rebounds per game. We know the matchup with Sabonis is tough, defending defensive rebound champ. So we don't necessarily love that one. Can we find something better? If we can't, I am very much okay using this as a 6th pick. But if we have something we like even more, we can certainly go with that. So I would even invite anyone watching along live here in the YouTube chat, comment with maybe your favorite pick. We'll give it a look, and maybe we'll end up including that one as our 6th in this 6 pick play. But in the meantime, Zach, do you have anything else that's kind of sticking out to you?
Yeah, and I think it's kind of like right in that same range for me as the Zubac pick in terms of my confidence in it, where like I like it, but I don't love it. On the other side of that Pistons-Hawks game, Clint Capella, his rebound line is set. Let me see where it's at. I was actually just looking at the points. Oh, no rebound line up. Yeah, so never mind. But what I want to look at when that does.
His rebounds are 7.5. With 0.9x for the over, 1.1x to the lower.
So we've seen his rebounds come way down this year, right? And some of that is the minutes coming down too. But I think Clint Capella maybe he's certainly on the backside of the career, right? Yeah. But with Jalen Duren doubtful on the other side, I think it just presents an opportunity for Clint Capella to go out there. We've seen this guy double-double in the first quarter plenty of times in his career. Now, again, are those days in the past? Probably. But I think this is one that I'm looking at. And I think with the 0.9x, I lean towards Zubac if we're deciding between those two. But if you can find 7.5 over there on like Prize Picks, where you're maybe getting that just the no multiplier or not a negative multiplier on it, I would prefer Capella. But I think on Underdog here, I would go with you on the Zubac pick out of those two.
Yeah, I kind of was hoping that we'd have a better first quarter option as well in 0.8x. So I don't think we want to go anywhere here on Capella, but I like the thought. And if it does move to an even number instead of that 0.9x multiplier, then we can definitely jump on that. But yeah, I think we're just going to go with Zubac. And remember, he's been rebounding the heck out of the ball this season. And part of it isn't just because he's like become a better rebounder. He's always been a good rebounder per minute. Yeah. It's the minutes that have really, really improved for him. So that also makes me just a little bit less worried about the matchup. It's not like all of his minutes are going to come against Sabonis. He's going to have some rotation minutes against some other guys. So I think we're fairly good here on the over 10.5 rebounds for Ivica Zubac.
So I'm taking a look just at his rotations over the last couple games because you're getting a little bit of a booster there if you take the over on his first quarter rebounds. It seems like about 6.5 to maybe 8 minutes is where that's settling. So I think I do lean towards the full game, the 10.5, rather than trying to attack that first quarter where he's going to be out there against Sabonis, who was last year's. He's the reigning, defending, rebounding champion of the world. So I like the full game one a little bit better.
Yeah, and he's been playing a ton of second quarter and fourth quarter minutes, not a ton of first and third quarter minutes. So I think I'm with you there. If we had a minute slip there and like maybe Sabonis was playing very few first quarter minutes, then I think that'd be interesting. It also makes me wonder, where are Sabonis's first quarter numbers? Why don't I check that while you check the Sacramento rotations, because with Zubac coming out as early as he is, we've got 3.5 rebounds for Sabonis. So if we have some nice first quarter rotations for Sabonis, then that might be a little bit intriguing as well.
We had nearly about 11 minutes last time out for Sabonis. Game before that had 2 rotations, but still played right around 10. So it does look like you're going to get 11 minutes against the Raptors. 3 games ago against the Hawks, you had 11 minutes. So it looks like you're getting about 10 or 11. So you're going to get a couple minutes without Zubac. So maybe you look at that 3.5 first quarter rebounds, like you mentioned. I like that call.
Yeah, I want to see what those rebound totals were for him. 3 games ago, he had 6 in the first quarter. Last game, he had 3 in the first quarter. Or 2 games ago, he had 3, sorry. And then last game against Miami, he had 3 as well. So hasn't been crushing this number, but we do see like a bit of a matchup advantage. I wish that this had a nice little multiplier as well. So I think on the even number here at 3.5 first quarter rebounds for Sabonis, I think I still just prefer the full game for Zubac down at 10.5. Just being like this strikes me as one of those lines that we just want to take no matter what the matchup is. And most matchups, it's going to be 11.5, maybe even 12.5. So I think the matchup is pretty much priced in here on Zubac, although it has just gone down to 0.94x. So we didn't get it in time. I
stuck it in under the wire, dude. I got it in there with no multiplier.
Beautiful, beautiful. All right, so yeah, I think now I might be a little bit more intrigued by this first quarter rebounds. I think what I'm going to do is maybe reevaluate a little bit after the stream here when I have more time to dig in, do some other stuff. In the meantime, why don't we jump over to the pick and roll promo that Underdog has? So we've talked about this before, but guys, if you aren't on Underdog yet, make sure you join with promo code FTN. You'll get a bunch of free money, up to $1,000 a deposit match. So definitely want to get in on that. But then they also, on the app only, not on desktop, on the app, they have a 20% profit boost for what they're calling like their pick and roll NBA game, which is basically just all you do is you pick players to go over 20 plus points. So every single player, instead of having a different line, they're going to have a different multiplier. And the best way to do this is use the tool as usual. In fact, why don't I bring up the tool here? And what I like to do is I just go to points and then I just look for guys that we have a big advantage on, right? So I don't really want to go to Mitchell because he's going to be well under the 1.0x. But Klay Thompson, we've got the line at 14.5. We have him projected at almost 19 points. And again, this is a guy that we actually went and manually brought down all of his shooting rates, and we still have him projected this high. We've talked about him a ton lately. He was well on his way to hitting in the last game and just unfortunately didn't play like the last 17 minutes or so of that game. Might have even been more like the last 19 minutes, but continue to project him really well. And it continues to be true what we've been saying about Klay. He's going to have those games where he's shooting a lot, shooting really well. He's also going to have games where his usage is a little bit lower. So we didn't bring him up at 14.5, but at 19.5, I absolutely love that, getting a 1.8x multiplier on Klay Thompson. So he's going to be my first of the pick and roll plays. And we're just looking for a 3-pick here. Remember, the baseline is 7x in these, so we're getting an even better 3-pick payout. And of course, if you're going with a 1.8x and some other boosts, as we're going to talk through, you can get some big, big payouts here in this game.
How about we go to the other side of that game and stack it up? I think Bradley Beal sitting here at, let me pull it back up, sitting at 1.76x to go over 19 and a half, right? You see in the tool there, of course, like Alex explained, you can put in this user line to whether it's for your pick and roll on Underdog or Demons or Goblins on Prize Picks, that user input is a great feature there. So, right, Bradley Beal looks kind of like Klay Thompson. I think if we like one, we should like the other, and they correlate from being in that same game. That game definitely up-paced and close in Vegas right now, right? Mavericks 2.5-point home favorites, 232 implied total. And I think, right, we can go and try to find somebody. Like I see you have Fred VanVleet pulled up right here. Let's talk about Fred. But also, like you mentioned, when you have these two guys at 1.8 and 1.76, you can maybe go take a little bit of an easier one, somebody that maybe even projects over 20 points and still be coming out ahead in terms of your payout multiplier. But I want to hear what you have to say about Fred, because tough matchup, but if you're looking for a guy who's going to be out there for 36, maybe even 40 minutes, if this game stays close, Fred VanVleet fits the bill.
Yeah, he does. This isn't one that I'm like super convicted by. It just strikes me that his multiplier shouldn't be over 2, and it is. I think it was like 2.2x or something like that. And so we saw this guy go over 20 points a ton a season ago. He hasn't gone over 20 a ton this year, but he has averaged 20 a game in the last 2 games. So we're seeing the scoring come. He went over 20 last game, shooting 10 of 11 from the field. Actually would have probably gotten to 30, 35 had he been needed at all in the fourth quarter. So is starting to see some good signs from him offensively. I think they do need him to be a little bit aggressive, especially in a matchup like this. So I think this is another one where I'm not touching the over 14.5, but I think he has the ceiling that we're looking for, where that 2.2x multiplier, whatever it is, might even be 2.3x, is just too high and worth attacking. But if you have something else that you like here, I'm more than happy to entertain some other ideas here. I will note, though, check this out. We have this at like 6.6% win probability. We're getting a 45x payout on this play. Just a massive, massive value according to the tool here. And it's also a big value, by the way, partly because of the 20% profit boost. But if you go try to build the exact same thing on any sports book, the best numbers you can get for these guys are on FanDuel. And these 20 plus for Klay, Beal, and VanVleet would pay out 36-1 on FanDuel. 36 to 45x is a huge, huge difference. So we're getting some really, really strong value on Underdog. They have created a very fair, fun game here, especially since we're getting a 20% profit boost on all these too. So definitely want to get on, you definitely want to get on Underdog. Make sure that you're playing this each day. I think you get like 20% profit boost every single day on this right now. That's not going to last for long. I think they're doing this to build some popularity of that game, and we should be taking advantage for sure.
And just to clarify again, to get that profit boost, does it have to be this 3-pick play for the pick and roll?
I think it has to be either 2 or 3. It lists it on the app, but you can build these like pick and roll type slips for as many guys as you want. But I think you only get the profit boost if you're limiting it to 2 or 3 players. And it's 3x for 2-pick, 7x is the baseline for 3-pick. So we want to be taking the 3 picks in this, even with that 20% boost.
So if we wanted to get one that's a little bit closer to that just 1x multiplier, like pull up Julius Randle. Because I'm sitting over here swiping faster than I have since my younger days. And I see Julius Randle sitting at 0.9x, and the tool's got him right a little over 23.5. It's a good matchup against Portland here tonight. I know the tool has liked Julius kind of throughout, but I think the 0.9x multiplier on the pick and roll promo here like indicates that it's a pretty strong bet to take the over here on 19.5. So 0.9x combining with our little game stack there too, I think that probably gives us an okay payout. 20.32x on my app right now would be the payout if you put Julius Randle in there. So, right, you get multiple bonuses on this game mode per day right now. So you can do both and still come out ahead if you just hit one.
Yeah, I like this call a lot. Since opening night when he scored 16 against the Lakers, he has gone over 20 in every single game except one. That one came 2 games ago against Charlotte when he only played 25 minutes in a blowout. So he has been really solid to this number. And we talked about it a few shows ago. We were a little bit concerned that, well, all right, he's shooting at a percentage that he's not going to be able to sustain. But now in the last 3 games, over 3, 1 for 4, 1 for 4 from 3, he's still getting to that 20 points number. So I think he probably should be more like 0.75 or 0.8x, given the consistency and the aggression that we're seeing from him. And remember, it's the same reason why the GPP scores loved all of these Minnesota guys last night. It's because they just have so much concentrated production on the offense that it's not even like Randle and Edwards and DiVincenzo are stealing from one another. There's plenty of room for them all to succeed together, and we're seeing that on a nightly basis right now from all these guys. So I think this Randle call is really good. And one thing you can do, you can build 4 different 3-pick plays, one leaving Randle out, one leaving Van Vliet out, one leaving Klay out, and one leaving Beal out. If they go 4 for 4, you make a ton of money. If they go 3 for 4, you still have yourself a fantastic night on these. So I think that's probably going to be the strategy that I go with here. We don't have too much time left, Zach, but why don't we jump in and talk some about the GPP scores and what we're seeing on the main slate tonight. Hopefully we can get more winners like Albert from last night.
Yeah, I think the thing that stands out to me from a roster construction standpoint here this morning, like, first of all, you're going to have plenty of value on this slate. It's shaping up to be stars and scrubs, but it also right now feels to me like a night where I am forcing a double center lock in my DraftKings lineups because, I mean, look, we've got Miles Turner, no James Wiseman, no Isaiah Jackson behind him. Great matchup against the Hornets. We've got Nikola Jokic, right, who's going to project for damn near 70, I would imagine. I know you've got the projections up there on screen. Nimiush Keita, right, should start again here for Boston unless they throw us a curveball because Luke Cornett, doubtful now with a hamstring issue. Beef Stew in place of Jalen Duren, who is doubtful, right? We've got Daniel Gafford. Derek Lively is going to miss this game again for the Mavs. You've got Karl Anthony Towns, which I think it's a pretty good matchup against Milwaukee at almost every position at this point. You've got Goga still starting for the shorthanded Magic in a decent matchup. Like, I could keep going with these center plays here. That's what stood out to me this morning from the construction standpoint is there's too many centers to love here, and that makes it a little bit tougher for me on FanDuel where, you only got the one center spot, so certain guys like a Jaren Jackson Jr., an Isaiah Stewart over on FanDuel who are power forward center, those guys make a lot of sense over there where you can play them and also get one of these true centers, a Jokic at the top end, a Keita at the bottom. I think Keita's still 4,100 on FanDuel. And you've got Luka in such an advantageous spot tonight, both I think on paper and just historically with how we know he loves to pop off against the Suns. On FanDuel, I'm leaning more towards spending down at my actual center spot, getting up to a guy like Luka, or, spending up on a Giannis at power forward, somebody like that, a Tatum against Brooklyn, right? I think for me, I'm going to focus my Jokic exposure on DraftKings and probably forego him in my one lineup on FanDuel.
I like it. I'll tell you what stood out the most to me when I first saw the GPP scores just now, that I forgot a key step in the GPP scores. So I don't know if you guys saw that little bit of wizardry live there, but they are now fixed. Went back, fixed that. And look who's at the top once again, our boy Cade Cunningham. He has kind of been the GPP score king all season, and now he's got this unbelievable matchup with Atlanta. So right now we're only projecting about 14% ownership on him. It certainly might come up, but I can guarantee you this, if it doesn't come up, I will be using Cade Cunningham, and he'll be the first guy locked into my lineups. Yeah,
back-to-back kind of sneaky triple doubles there for Cade. Like, typically you see a guy get a triple double and you're like, oh man, maybe 55, 60, maybe even more DraftKings points. No, just like barely over 50. But we'll take that for 8,700, and this Atlanta matchup is fantastic. So I think we have to ride with the GPP scores again here on Cade because of how well it has served us over the last two. And
if those peripheral rates continue in a matchup like Atlanta, it it comes with, a 27-point triple-double instead of a 17-point triple-double. So we could absolutely see that 60, 65 DraftKings point upside from Cade tonight. So I'll be all over him, I think.
I think really the only other overarching takes that I had, maybe a little bit more team specific. We talked about Jaren Jackson when we were going over the props, but Scottie Pippen Jr. I think is 6K flat over there on FanDuel. He should be highly owned, but I think that is chalk that I'm fine to eat because we know how productive he can be, and it's a great matchup against the Wizards. I talked about Jokic. If you want to get there on FanDuel, be my guest. It's a fantastic play just from a raw projection standpoint, but more thinking or talking about earlier just the roster construction there positionally on FanDuel. Miles Bridges is out for the Hornets. So on that side of the Pacers-Hornets game, we're probably going to take a second, maybe even a third look at a Grant Williams. Maybe if you're maxing one of these tournaments, you're getting some more Cody Martin or somebody because they're going to slide down who are we going to here? Taj Gibson, right? Because Moussa Diabate going to run big minutes? I don't think so. So Grant Williams, I hate playing Grant Williams, but it's just kind of a minutes play. His minutes and price, especially on DraftKings, looks pretty good. And then kind of a similar take where it's just a minutes play. You see him on the screen there. Brandon Boston Jr., Pelicans, just extremely shorthanded still. Zion's questionable. Jordan Hawkins is going to miss here tonight. So Brandon Boston should continue to start. It's a tough matchup. So I want to keep my eye on the ownership, right? Coming up close to 20% right there. But, if he's going to get 35 minutes, I can't ignore Brandon Boston at 4,400. And I think he looks pretty good on FanDuel as well as things stand now. But again, we've got Q tags, doubtful tags. We'll get some late news on a slate this big that we don't have here this morning. So you got to stay tuned to the updates on the site here at FTN Fantasy. Of course, we discuss all of those things. Any changes to our thoughts on the slate in the FTN Fantasy Discord chats. And we'll have our, top plays in the Opto at least an hour before lock here and keep it rolling. Because it's been, again, we talked about dancing around a big props night. It's been a hell of a week on the DFS side, both for yours truly, and I think for a lot of the subscribers as well. I see AJ in the chat here. Shout out to AJ, the $30,000 man. He said, hey, Brandon Boston has been crushing lately. I agree, and AJ knows better than any of us.
Absolutely. I wanted to bring up one final thing here about the GPP scores. One thing that I have had some success here doing early on this NBA season is we know that in NBA DFS, you can't fade all of the chalk. You have to play some of the chalk. And so one thing I like doing is sorting by ownership and now finding, okay, who are the highest owned guys who have positive GPP scores? Because remember what the GPP scores tell us. Is the player under-owned or over-owned? So this negative 2.1 on Jaren Jackson says, you know what? Jaren Jackson might be subtly over-owned. Not so over-owned that you can't possibly use him in a lineup. You can still use him plenty. But Keda, a little under-owned. We've got Jokic a little under-owned. Boston, as you brought up, slightly, ever so slightly under-owned. So I think that's another way that you can use them. You don't have to just stack the best GPP scores. Find the highest owned guys with positive GPP scores, surround those guys with the best contrarian GPP scores, and now you're going to have just a really well-built lineup through and through every single time.
Yep. Anything else for you? I think, again, we'll have plenty more to discuss leading up to lock here tonight in the Discord, but I think a pretty good discussion on roster construction on both sites. Some of the teams we're looking to for values, the spend ups, right? Stars and scrubs type of slate. You pick your favorites, whether it's Luka tonight, whether it's Jokic, or you're going a little bit cheaper to some of these guys that are going to have a little bit less ownership. It should be a really fun slate here.
Yeah, congratulations once again, Albert, on that huge hit. I'm with you. Let's have another great night, hopefully, in both the props and the DFS streets. What is this last one? Yeah, AJ, 100%. For anyone who was with us in MLB, remember how we kind of treated hitting stacks, the GPP scores for hitters, differently than how we treated them for pitchers. And I think the NBA GPP scores should be treated more like the way we treated pitchers, where we're trying to find the best plays who are under-owned more than just who are the most under-owned plays. So it's a subtle difference, but I think it is an important difference. And so far this NBA season, we're seeing that. We've seen a lot of these, particularly like the game stacks, the game environments that are producing the high GPP scores are really, really separating from the field, potentially even more so than the random plays who have the upside to separate. It's just a lot easier for those guys to do so when the game environment is helping facilitate that more so than just, they happen to have a random, 40% usage game where they also shot well. So I like this point, though, because the GPP scores have been unbelievable in every sport, but they're also slightly different in every sport. So we're kind of learning together how to best use them in NBA. And and that should be a scary thought for everybody else in the industry, because they've already produced a lot of winners here for us this NBA season, and they're only going to get better as we continue to find the best ways to use them this season.
Yeah, it's going to be a smooth ride, I think, because it's been smooth so far, and it's only going to get better as you continue to dial that in here, the more data that rolls in. Speaking of data, right? You can check my Twitter at Kawhisenberg DFS. You can see a little article that dropped this morning. Very excited for the big things coming here on the NBA side of things at FTN.
Yeah, I didn't even know that, so I can't wait to go read it. So with that, we will catch you guys next time. We'll be back Monday. Don't forget, NFL show Sunday morning, paywalled for all of you guys. All right, boys, we will catch you next time.